I am just coming to you to tell you I just got some trimming done. Tomorrow will probably be a luster day. I have a couple of mugs that I need to luster. One's kind of a custom order, but I'm probably going to end up lustering both because they both came out of the kiln pretty good. So I'm going to luster both of those and then probably have the customer choose which one they want, and then the other one will go up for sale. As far as writing goes, I'm falling behind on that as well. I planned on editing at least a chapter a day, and I ended up just kind of having real life, you know, life took over, and I didn't end up having the time to be able to do what I wanted to do. But some things are kind of lessening and getting a little easier and not needing as much of my time, like in real life and, you know, personal life. So I'm hoping that means that it'll give me more studio time on the regular. Yeah, that's kind of the hope, so that I won't have to I've been doing this balancing act along with being sick and stuff, with appointments and things like that. And so, it's been kind of a struggle to have the time and the availability to be able to throw as much as I want, to be able to do both the writing and the pottery. So I am a little bit behind on the edits. I did end up getting the note cards. I got the note cards all figured out, got all the chapters plotted out on the note cards, and we will do that. I do have some thoughts, some ideas, things that I'm going to need to fix. I kind of had planned on most of these 2 months being like just going through the edits and editing it and then getting it to beta readers, but I'm realizing that it's going to be a little bit more complicated than that, of course. So yeah, I'll probably do a little bit of that tomorrow, maybe. Yeah, I'll probably do some of that tomorrow. I don't think it'll take me more than like 2 hours to luster, so maybe I'll have a little bit of time to kind of go over with you, and we'll talk about that later though. We'll talk about that later. For now, I did get all of my pots trimmed, handles pulled. We're going to set those aside for a couple of days, probably luster tomorrow, and then maybe do some kind of thinking, some plotting, some story thinking tomorrow as well. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Sorry about the sound. My heater just decided to turn on as I was recording this. I told you that I was kind of waiting for some note cards to get in because I wanted to make sure and like separate all the different chapters by character and kind of lay them all out, because I was kind of having a hard time with some of the plot, especially because, like I said, this book was originally going to be a trilogy, and so I really kind of just needed to see it all out in front of me. I don't always do this. I tend not to unless I'm really having a hard time with like the plot and where I want to go with the story, or in this case how I want to get it all to fit without feeling rushed and things like that, or being way too long, which is kind of like a tricky thing to do. So what I did was I kind of broke up all the chapters by a certain color. So our villain is pink because he would hate being pink, and it just made me feel better inside. So Tenora's pink, and we've got Trenton, who's our main character, is blue because Trenton's eyes are blue. They're kind of like a cobalt color. This isn't quite cobalt, but anyways, we made Trenton blue. Kalan I made green just because it was the other color I had, and although her eyes are silver, green's associated a lot with her in book 1. So we've got green, and then white. I did white for Piper. Is another hollowed that Klon came across in book 1. So I did actually want to make her have some POVs in book 2. If you want a little bit of like a surprise thing. She is one of the characters that the spin-off is going to be off of. So I do want to make sure to include her POV in this book so that it's not so weird when I decide to write the spin-off, which probably won't be for a while. We've got our villain, we've got Trenton and Klon like usual, which they're both in book 1 as well, and then we've got Piper. And so yeah, those are our POVs. And the thing I realized when I had them all laying out here is that Piper doesn't have enough chapters. I've realized that, like, she's missing a lot in the beginning. Like, there's one chapter in the beginning. Like, a lot of the other chapters are kind of after the midpoint. So there's not really another chapter before the midpoint. And there's a lack. There's a lack of POV from her, which I kind of didn't realize until I'd had all the colors laid out. And I'm like, wait, there is no white hardly on this board. I think I ended up only having like 4 chapters from her perspective, which is not what I want. I do want there to be more chapters from her perspective. So that's one of the things I'm going to have to fix. The other thing I realized with having these all out on the board was there's a good balance of, you know, our villain. I don't want there to be too many from his perspective, is mostly the reason why I have him included in the book is because there is just no way to know what's going on in the area that he's in at that moment. And I just kind of needed a POV that showed the kind of behind the scenes, right, of what's going on. Because, like, you know, Kalon and Trenton, I mean, you kind of got behind the scenes in the first book with Trenton, but since Trenton is no longer part of that, for reasons, if you're curious, read book 1, but he's no longer part of being able to be that POV, being able to show the behind the scenes, being able to show that perspective. And so I needed a new character to show that part of the story. And so enter in Tenor, which is Trenton's dad. And yeah, so I don't want a ton from his perspective. I do think I'm going to add another chapter just because I kind of introduce the council at the end, but you don't really get to see anything, hear anything from them in book 1. And then I just kind of throw them in at the end, and it's like, it just doesn't, there needs to be more, right? So that's another thing, is I'm either going to change one of his chapters or add to it to have the council involved. You know, the council who passed the edict and all that jazz. So, you know, we got to show more of our villains, is basically what I'm saying. Or maybe not villains, but antagonists. Tenor is definitely a villain, but the council is more of like an antagonist, I guess. So I've got all of those laid out, and like I could use another chapter or 2, but like I said, I don't need a lot of POVs from his perspective. And then the thing I noticed about his perspectives too, especially when I was editing, was they're all internal. There's very little conversations, like very little dialogue and things like that. So I think adding like a scene with the council will help with that. And that is kind of something I'm going to have to think about when I go and edit his chapters, to kind of include more dialogue and back and forth and stuff. So it's not just all internal. Not to say there's anything wrong with internal, but we want that balance. So yeah, so that's the kind of thing I realized with Tenor. Trenton and Kalon, I'm pretty happy with their levels. I think Kalon has a little bit more than I was expecting as far as chapters go. But it kind of makes sense because she was like a main character in the first book, so I'm still kind of used to writing from her perspective. So that might change. I might lessen or increase the amount from Trenton. Trenton does have a pretty good spread here. You can see like a lot of these are blue. A lot of them are blue and a lot of them are green. So I've got a good mix there. And then the other thing I was kind of trying to figure out with doing this whole layout is like the plot, because I have a couple of sticky chapters. I have a couple of plot holes, and I'm kind of struggling with what to do with it. And the biggest thing that I think I've kind of come to terms with, you know, looking at this and kind of thinking through it and seeing the places where the plot struggles, I think I'm going to run into the problem of needing to rewrite the ending completely. So not only do I need to like change some of Tenor's chapters, add more Piper chapters, I also kind of just have to scrap my ending. Not entirely, but so all the ending chapters of this row, and I have to say, yeah, from like here on, it's probably gonna have to be rewritten. So like from chapter 35, 36 to 45. a little bit of scenes that I am going to keep, but a lot of this bottom row just needs to get rewritten. It just doesn't, I feel like it doesn't make, the story as it is not making Tenor enough of a villain, and enough of a thoughtful villain as well. And the motivation is there, but like, it's not, like, you see the motivation, you see what, at least a little bit what he's trying to do, but the level of planning that has gone into this and the amount that he is trying to do and, you know, be a villain about, right, is just not enough. It's just not enough for the amount of planning that he's done and the amount of planning he's gone into. And I mean, you see a lot of the planning in book 1, you will see more of it in here, but like, I feel like it's a little too, it's not epic enough for how much planning, because basically I have him having planned this thing, these couple of things, these major plot points for, I mean, some of them are, I will admit, some of them are kind of like spur of the moment, like, this is how I deal with this kind of thing. But like, his big overall plan has been in the works for years, right? And so I need the payoff to fit that. And the payoff is not fitting that. And I also have problems with, there's like a major plot hole in one of his chapters. So, and the tricky part with having to fix that is the time frame that I have, the amount of time I have before this book needs to go to the editor. And like, honestly, like, if I had a choice, I totally would have booked out later. I would have booked out November or December, or, you know, September, November, December. I would have booked out that far if I could have, but she didn't have any availabilities for that. And so I'm kind of stuck with August. And I will admit, kind of looking at this and seeing how much I don't want to keep, like this whole row, is like, it's a little overwhelming, I'm not gonna lie. But I do have a deadline, right? I've set myself a deadline that this needs to get done by August. We need to have beta readers looking at it by like May? No. March. Yeah, May. We need beta readers to have it in their hands by like May. But yeah, so I've got a lot going on here, obviously. Anyways, I've kind of been chatting at you for a really long time, and it's gonna not be fun to edit this part of the video, but that's what I got. That's kind of the plan going forward, I guess. And yeah. So the rest of today is going to be pottery. I need to do some sanding. I need to do some lusters so that I can luster fire to put them in a luster fire tomorrow. But there's only 2 mugs that I'm lustering right now. Since some of my bowls didn't turn out and they need to be refired, I'm not going to worry about luster with them. So we're just going to do the 2 mugs I originally planned for luster. So that shouldn't take me too long. The sanding shouldn't take me too long. I'm going to be doing those things today. And that's where we're at. And yeah, I will show you the lustering. I got luster done, stuck it in the kiln. I'm gonna let them dry and fire them tomorrow. And then I got some sanding done. Everything is packed to go to Scalehouse Market. I'm gonna drop off some more pottery there. Like I said, I keep selling things, which is good. But they do need to have some. They need to restock. My shelves are getting kind of empty. So that's all ready to go tomorrow. But I actually have about 2 hours-ish left before I need to go pick up my kids. So I'm going to spend probably an hour of it trying to see if I can get any further in what to do with the ending here. And then probably an hour of it editing a chapter. It's probably the plan. That's kind of what I'm going on. So, yeah. Alright, so unfortunately my camera died, so you don't get to see everything that I was kind of doing, but let me show you an example. Basically what I did is I took a different colored pen and used that to kind of write down all the changes. So I would put like a star if it was a scene I really wanted to keep. I got a little carried away with trying to fix this part that I ended up not rewriting everything. Like, not everything needs to get rewritten, but I actually, was it chapter 3 or 4? Actually, I have some changes that I need to make that kind of trickle down and kind of lead to the new ending that I have. You know, I love foreshadowing, so I'm probably even going to go back and like fix a little bit of two to kind of hint at things. And like none of the beginning chapters are like super major rewrites really. I put where I needed to, like an idea I had for adding another chapter for Piper. I also, yeah, I ended up like I just used black to kind of fix, like to kind of show the difference of what I had written versus what I need to change. So all of these cards kind of have just that black marker on them. So this is the chapter that I need to add for Piper, so the whole thing is black, but most of them kind of have a correlating color. So you've got like Tenor was pink, but then in the black I put the things that needed to change. So I was only going to give myself an hour, but I ended up kind of getting carried away. And I kind of, what I like to start with, what kind of helps me with this process of needing to change things or rewrite things, is just write down questions. I just write down all the questions I can think of, all of the things that I'm not sure I need to fix. And I usually do that on my Kindle Scribe. And so I just kind of started doing that. I just started writing all these questions, like, how is this going to happen? How is this going to happen? How am I going to handle this? How are we going to fix this plot hole? Things like that. So just starting off with that kind of got my brain going. And I was able to kind of like realize, like I started off with Tenor, so I was kind of able to realize all the things I needed to change with him. I wrote down questions about what his ultimate goal was and then tried to work backwards. Because the plot as I had it, there was a lot of holes and stuff. So I was like, well, ultimately all of this is because of Tenor. So I really needed to start with him and his perspective first. And then I was able to kind of work backwards for like what he wanted to have done and what all the things that needed to happen in order for all that stuff to get done, like kind of backwards. So I did that, and then I realized that, oh, well, I had to change some of Trenton's chapters because of that. I needed to change some of Kalan's chapters because of that. So, yeah, so I've kind of just gone through. I actually have some chapters that I'm probably going to just delete, like I don't need anymore because I've changed the plot a little bit. I kind of had this miscellaneous character, wasn't sure if I needed to keep or not, and I thought about writing him out, like just not having him in the book, but then in dealing with like Tenor and how Tenor's gonna try to get what he wants to happen. I found a purpose. The character suddenly had a purpose. I was kind of having a hard time with Finian. He's kind of a supporting character in book 1 that I wanted to bring back in book 2, and I was kind of having a hard time with his motivations. So I went back and figured out, like, with Tenor again doing all these things, how would Finian play into that? I was also struggling with the epilogue. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I think the epilogue is going to be from Piper's perspective. I figured out what would be really cute, like, end of the book, kind of to culminate everything, to call back to the first book, to, you know, wrap up the second book, and to even kind of lead into, at some point, whenever I feel like writing it, the spin-off, which is going to have Piper in it, and Piper's going to be one of the main characters. So, yeah, I was like, oh, that's perfect. It'll fit nicely with everything. It wraps up everything nicely. So I was really excited about that, because that epilogue, man, endings are hard for me, which is funny because I really think an ending can make or break a book. And it's really frustrating for me when I really, really enjoy a book, but the ending just doesn't land right. So I guess I kind of put that extra pressure on myself to have a good ending. And often because of that, I struggle with having an ending that's like what I feel like, is it, you know, worth all the effort of reading the book, right? And then I know, you know, journey, not destination. But I still want the ending to kind of be closure and make sense. And I think it's kind of cool that I managed to maybe lead it into the spin-off whenever I get around to writing that one. Lots of little scribbly black marks. And I think this will work. I don't know that I figured out everything, but I figured out a large portion of the plot. I figured out the ending, and I think the ending's a lot better than it was before. Not that it was bad, but I definitely made it better. So, yeah. And again, like most of these chapters, they're either like remove this chapter or rewrite. Like all of these chapters are like rewrite. So, yeah. Anyways, that's kind of all I was able to get done today. I didn't get to the chapter editing, but that's probably a good thing because I will need to kind of go back and fix some things with how I'm rewriting the plot. I'm going to end this video because it's already going to probably be too long for people to watch. Because I was actually able to spend like 2 hours just going through all of this, I think I'll just be able to do rewrites. I think I'll be able to just start on like rewrites, edits, just finish doing that. Good news, like I didn't quite get done when I had planned today because I did want to get a chapter edited, but at the same time I'm glad I didn't because I changed things. So yeah, anyways, that's the end. I'm not gonna chat at you anymore. I will see you in the next video, and thank you for watching. Bye.